publication of these photos would not add any additional benefit to our understanding of what was carried out in the past by a small number of individuals. In fact, the most direct consequence of releasing them, I believe, would be to further inflame anti-American opinion and to put our troops in greater danger.
Well, that was the president today in a sharp reversal of a decision he made, agreeing with the Pentagon to release pictures, photos that show alleged abuse by military personnel of detainees, agreeing in a case of the American Civil Liberties Union to release these photographs. The ACLU not happy today, releasing this quote: "The decision to not release the photographs makes a mockery of President Obama's promise of transparency and accountability. It is essential that these photographs be released so that the public can examine for itself the full scale and scope of prisoner abuse that was conducted in its name." Let's bring in our panel. Juan Williams, news analyst for National Public Radio; Nina Easton, Washington bureau chief of Fortune magazine; and Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Steve, your thoughts?
Well, I think the ACLU response is a little bit hysterical. I think they said that, now the Obama administration is complicit in Bush administration torture. I think that's a little extreme. I think he deserves credit for making a good decision, for making a thoughtful decision. And I'm told, having talked to some people about this, that he did this in part, at least, as a result of conversations that he had with senior military officials, including those responsible for winning the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, who pressed him very hard and said this would really cause us problems as we try to win in Afghanistan and as we try to pull back from Iraq.
Yeah, we're hearing General Ray Odierno really made a full-court press to have these not released. Nina?
Yeah, it's one of those flip-flops, if we could call it that I think was welcome and incredibly responsible on the president's part. By the way, I think it's also politically astute, because if, for example, these inflammatory photos were released, and if, for example, a terrorist got a hold of American soldiers and decided to retaliate with some kind of high-profile, beatings of them, I think the Democrats would pay a big political price. So I think it was a good political move. What's going to happen, though, is that it's not clear that the legal system is going to move in the direction of keeping these blocked. I think the ACLU is probably right when they say that the Second Circuit has already ruled on it, this district judge has ruled on it, the national security concerns have already been raised, already been hashed out. I'm told by legal scholars that the odds of the Supreme Court granting cert and actually accepting this for review are not very high. It's not a likely thing. So really the thing that the president should do and could do down the line is issue an executive order that would provide an exemption for the Freedom of Information Act during wartime. I think that's probably the legal route that would really block this.
Because, Juan, that is interesting. The White House saying that the president felt that the legal argument wasn't really played out in the court on the national security issue, and he wants to go back to the courts. However, he could sign the order and make it moot.
Right, but what the court said, that it was speculative, that in fact this would further endanger American troops. There's no way to know that. And secondly, the court said, you know what, this has come before us, and we have decided that as a function of the Freedom of Information Act, the only way that you can get a waiver from releasing these photos if you can prove that it would endanger somebody. And they said that just wasn't there. Again, coming back to this speculative argument. The argument, I think, now becomes a legal argument, and in part, you'd have to say that this is a political decision by President Obama. President Obama previously was saying he had no choice in the matter. He wasn't going to simply extend it because he didn't believe that he could win, and he wasn't going to force it on the High Court. As Nina pointed out, it's unlikely the High Court will take it. But here he is now, as someone who is clearly listening to his military commanders, someone who is sensitive to the Pentagon. I think this is a clear message from the administration. When it comes to military matters, we are with you. We are with the men and women who are out there fighting. Comes at a time when we're putting more people on the ground in Afghanistan, amping up efforts that will extend into Pakistan. We still have almost 150,000 people in Iraq, don't forget. People tend to whiz right by. So this is a dangerous moment, and I think he's sensitive to that timing issue.
And one point on the quantitative analysis. After the Abu Ghraib pictures were released, military commander said 10 days after that the attacks went up 200% in Iraq. I mean, that's kind of quantitative on the ground in Iraq.
Here they're saying, though, military people are saying that these pictures are not as bad as the pictures from Abu Ghraib.
Yeah.
That you have some nudity, but that's about it.
What about the left's reaction? I've already seen the blogs heating up. They're just livid that the president is not standing up for this and releasing this in transparency. They point to this quote on his second day: "I will hold myself as president to a new standard of openness. Information will not be withheld just because I say so." You've got one article saying he's neocon in chief already.
I just think they don't get the point that transparency and accountability come right head-to-head up with protecting the national security time and time again. This is not something that's just new in the history of this country. This is a classic clash, and they have an interest in transparency and accountability, and I think the president's finding out his main interest is national security.
Yeah, but I think this underscores the difficulty that he faces in actually governing, as opposed to campaigning and saying things like, my administration is going to be the most transparent in the history of the country. Now you have to make these decisions, and you have people like Ray Odierno and others saying, this isn't speculative. You know, the court may say it's speculative, but I think Ray Odierno is saying we have data that shows that this isn't speculative. Attacks will increase, and those are pretty compelling arguments, I think, for the president.
Well, you know, the thing is that the argument from the left would be that those pictures are important to prove the scope and extent of abuse of detainees or prisoners, and that it ties into the larger conversations taking place here in Washington about the Bush administration offering rationalizations from the Justice Department for engaging in enhanced interrogation, but that this was widespread.
And what about the argument about critics who say this administration let these memos out, but now is closing the door on releasing these photos?
No, well, the photos, it seems to me, are not. We know what happened in the photos, and they're after the fact. The clear implication of an investigation to the memos is: was there an effort by the Bush administration to break the law and knowingly do so in terms of allowing torture to take place?
Any analogy at all to the two?
Well, I would just point out that there was clearly with the release of the memos, I think there was an argument that was going to be politically advantageous for the administration. Here, I think if he puts these photos out, he's going to get a lot of questions, particularly from members of the military. Why are you doing this? And there wasn't an obvious answer. I think that made it politically difficult for them to do that.